So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome. I'm Max Cutler, a content creator at the European BaaS provider Swan, and today I'm here with two lovely guests to discuss embedded finance, embedded lending, and the possibilities for the future of those things really coming together and making something quite lovely and beautiful. First, we'll ask my fellow here on the right to introduce himself.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Max. Thanks for having me. My name is Fabian. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer at Banxware, an embedded lending provider. Started in 2020. Great to have you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you for being here.
Perfect. Yeah, and my name is David. I'm heading the DACH, Benelux, and Eastern European region for Swan.
Very good. Awesome. All right, let's just jump right in then. Let's talk a little bit about sort of how these companies were begun, right? So like what were sort of the opportunities that were seen in the market? What were the founders really thinking about at the time when the things really got going? David, maybe you want to start?
Yeah. So when Swan was founded, the three co-founders had one idea, and this was to make banking as a service, or to embed banking services into a product way easier than it used to be. Because what we had seen in Europe before was a first wave of banking as a service providers. And they focused mainly on enabling new banks or kind of companies who had a bank in the core to start working without a known banking license. And what the founders of Swan said was, we need a bit of development here, because the idea from the beginning was to enable any kind of company to integrate banking services into their own offering, and not just fintech experts or banking experts. And this is how Swan started back in 2019. And then for 2 years, the founders with the first small team, they really took the time to build the technical platform and to get our own e-money license, so that only in 2021 we actually started going out into the market, winning the first partners for Swan. And yeah, now we're a team of 140 people and have presences in France, in Germany, in Spain, and in the Netherlands, and are really seeing us as a European banking as a service player.
Nice. Fabian?
Yeah, cool. Super interesting story, quite some similarities on how we look into the space. Fun fact, like Jens and Miriam, my two of my co-founders, they met on Money 2020 in Las Vegas back then. Money 2020 is always a big thing for Banxware. A lot of good things happen. So they met and were discussing their observation in the market, that where Jens was basically seeing like a lack of solutions for example, cash advance in Germany, and Miriam, from her experience at RatePay, was saying, there's also demand in the market for merchants that basically need access to financing, and that was a little bit starting point. And we looked into this and basically saw why are not kind of these companies like payment service providers, why do they not basically help their merchants also with access to financing and to lending? And we realized quite quickly, it's quite difficult for them to do it. So that was basically a starting point where you say, would it not be great to basically enable any kind of platform to help their merchants, their SME customers, grow faster with access to financing, and by taking all of the complexity and all of the regulatory requirements and all of the difficulties in risk decisioning, take this everything away. And this is how we started. Focused on payment service providers, enable them to leverage their data, to leverage their merchant base, to offer fully branded financing solutions to them. And from there, we saw a lot of opportunities also in different other platform partners that we can work with. Nowadays active in Germany and the Netherlands, more than 50 people based in Berlin. Started in 2020, and now 3 years. Just celebrated our birthday a couple of weeks ago. So great journey so far.
Very nice. Yeah, so we have here sort of two complementary but different embedded finance players, right? So we have one, Swan, focusing on payments and cards, and then Banxware looking at lending and financing and trying to get sort of money into the hands of people who need it, right? the question I have for you, just to sort of elaborate on what you already said, is first for you, Fabian, is why lending in particular? What is so exciting about that opportunity, especially in the context of embedding these experiences into products?
Yeah, yeah. Well, lending is a good one, right? We see lending as a of kind of credit as a fuel, right? It can can help you to achieve the things that you want to achieve. Capital is of course one of the constraints, and efficient use of capital is basically you can create by using credit, by using lending. So it's a growth enabler. It's a fuel for basically support businesses in the first place. On the other hand side, it's still very hard especially for small businesses to basically get credit, right? So especially if you're young, fast growing, or if you're in an industry that is perceived a little bit more risky, it's super difficult to have access to it. So it's also a big challenge to basically make this more accessible for different kinds of businesses. And on the other hand side, it also is a value creator for the platform, because basically if you stimulate this growth for your businesses that, for example, on a marketplace that basically sell via you, and you stimulate the growth for them, you also strengthen your core business. And this is why lending in an embedded context into a platform, into a payment service provider, into a marketplace just basically fits all parties involved. And it's a tough nut to crack. So
Nice. Yeah, very good. And payments for Swan, what was sort of the opportunity there? Why is this so needed in the European payment space?
Yeah, I like your analogy of the fuel, of lending being the fuel. I think banking and especially payments, it might be the glue then to enable any kind of transaction in the first place, right? Whether it is B2C or B2B. So you need payment infrastructure to enable any kind of business. And this is also what we definitely saw as opportunity, because one of the main pain points that our founding team also identified is that payment and banking both is not always accessible at the point of need. And it's similar for you with the lending part. And this was an underlying hypothesis. We should enable any kind of company to actually position a banking service, a payment service at the point of need. And if we take the example in a B2B context, we're working a lot with invoice management, account management software providers, and the UX was imperfect, right? These platforms were really good in delivering, for example, a very good insights into invoices or enable an easier accounting process. But in the end, they mostly didn't enable payment directly out of the platform. So the end user would always need like at least two platforms to do this, not to manage invoices and to actually also pay them. And this is something where we see a great value in making these payments accessible at the point of need. Why should an end user, both B2B or B2C, leave a platform or have a banking app open to do a payment? And this is one of the underlying hypotheses of Swan.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think a lot of people, both commentators and people in the industry in BaaS, right, we're always talking about this idea of point of need. I think it's very clear to explain to people who are maybe not in the industry or who are looking to get into it about this sort of paradigm around experience, right? And it makes a lot of sense. People want to access things when they need it, right? Nonetheless, it's not as straightforward as just saying, okay, here I am, we have this product, and now we're right here at your point of need. There are still challenges, right? Yeah. And I think that's good, sort of where we want to kind of move on to the next thing is like, okay, we both Banxware and Swan had these ideas about a market, ideas about a product, about a go-to-market, but in the end, it's never smooth sailing, right? So yeah, would love to sort of understand what were sort of the initial experiences in the go-to-market. What kind of feedback were customers initially getting? How did both of the companies adjust, tweak features? What was sort of the experience there? Fabian, you can start.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to start. So we have a quite experienced founder team, right? So Jens, Miriam, Nicholas, and me. So all of us have quite a long history in the industry and on our different ways. So we knew it's not going to be an easy ride. And we knew, especially when it comes then also to lending, it's quite complex, right? You have a regulatory framework that is difficult to sail, but also, of course, like making credit decisions is in the first place not something easy, and then also kind of managing your risk and also have the capital available. All of these are quite complex things. So we knew it's going to be not easy. In the end, it turned out to be even harder than we expected in the first place. One because you need to basically especially from from the capital that you also need. We initially thought about a more leaner way of basically doing this, but realized no, we have to basically do the full 9 yards to basically cover the full experience. I think one of the surprises that we back then had, and it was 2020, right, when we basically started it. No one basically used the term embedded lending back then, and it was also clear the market was not there yet, right? So we were, of course, very deep into the field and looked into the US and in the UK and saw already the first signs, and we're super eager basically pitching this idea. And a lot of platforms, they just didn't get it at this point. Interestingly enough, they now come back and basically say, we were in contact there some time ago. Actually, we want to do this now. But back then, the market was also still not there. So it was a lot of education and also bringing this idea into the market. And the second one, or the third one was really about the technical integration, because on the one hand side, like we realized that, or it was clear for us that we want to keep the complexity away from it, from platforms. But the question is also, how do we do it? And we realized that our initial idea on how basically also this contextual integration that was supposed to work was working with one of the first partners that we started working, but it wasn't working for a lot of others. So we also had to tremendously change our technical approach, how we solve embedded lending, and to make it really smooth and easy for platform partners to work with us, because that was one of the first barriers to overcome. That basically, this integration effort was perceived as high, and we had to lower it. So these were a couple of the surprises that we had to solve.
Okay, so understood. So it was like capital requirements, evangelism, education about embedded lending as an opportunity, and then sort of needing to make technical adjustments from the initial. Understood. Yeah. And from Swan's side, what were the experiences early on?
I think what was a bit different for Swan than for Banxware was that there was already a first wave of banking as a service providers. So there already was some education in the market. But as I said earlier, until Swan came into the picture, it was very focused again on hardcore fintechs, right? They knew how to integrate a banking as a service provider, how to open accounts, issue cards for their end users. And what we then thought right from the beginning was maybe a bit less on the education part, but more on the delivery part, right? And see like, how can we simplify it a lot for any kind of company to basically integrate Swan to make it accessible as any kind of SaaS product. Because usually if you integrate a SaaS product into your own offering, you don't need to think about compliance and transaction monitoring and these kind of banking operations. And this was something where we said we need to take this over for any kind of customer. They should focus on their core business and add a banking product on top of this. And this was the education round that we had to make, and that we make this way more simpler, because a lot of the companies we're talking to today, they still think it's a super complex and super resourceful project to integrate a banking as a service, to integrate an account. And this is rather something where our partners, our leads are surprised how easy it actually is to work with us. Then maybe speaking for the DACH market, where I'm in charge of, I in the beginning thought, oh my God, it might be a bit difficult coming here as a French player and selling something to the German market. This surprisingly was not an issue at all. Okay. And I think this is a maybe a great achievement also, that we think European and that the ecosystem is of course accepting a European player into the market. However, on the other side, what we had to figure relatively early is the need to localize our product. Because I personally would have thought that based on our structure that we had, we have our license in France, we have French accounts, French IBANs, that this would, at least for a certain type of customer in Germany, still possible. But this was something that we learned really fast. We need a German account structure, we need German IBANs to be successful in this market. And this is something that we then also did.
Yeah, understood. So yeah, the localized product features, right? That's
Definitely
super key. No,
Yeah.
Understood.
Just a small side comment. I still find it weird that you have national IBAN, right? Why do we have this in a in a single European market? That doesn't make sense. But
Definitely.
I heard this experience also from others that the local IBAN thing, it's still hard requirement.
Definitely. No, with both with B2B and B2C customers, both. And we were also thinking a lot about this topic, but in the end we thought, okay, we won't change this. So we rather adapt, spend the resources in localizing the product and take it like this.
Yeah.
Sounds very good. Sounds like there was a lot of like early learnings that really shaped the way that the companies grew, right, and went to market. So that's always good. I think, you know, everyone, regardless of whether you're in fintech or embedded finance or even in other industries, right, like really making sure that those initial weeks and months are sort of this foundation for growth. Very, very important. So good to hear from you guys. Let's talk a little bit. So we can kind of do this a bit quickly because we think kind of covered this already. But you know, when you guys are talking to customers and trying to get them on board, trying to convince them that this is the right path to do, the right way to go forward, building a financial experience into their product, what are sort of the biggest challenges there, the biggest objections? What are you most typically dealing with to try to get them over the finish line? David, you can start.
I mean, we are a licensed institution, and we're working in an industry where we need to take care a lot on compliance, for example, and then making sure that all of the legal requirements are being met. And this is of course something, if we are talking with a partner who's not an expert in this kind of industry, where we need to do a lot of education, right? Where we also need to educate in the end that Swan is the one who's responsible, that the majority of compliance requirements is being met, so that our partners itself can focus on their core business. This is what I wanted to say. But still, it requires a lot of education. It requires a lot of hand-holding also to tell them like what is your responsibility, what is ours. And since 95% of the compliance requirements is our responsibility, the education part on this is the most important one, for sure.
Absolutely. Fabian, on your side?
Yeah. So as I said already earlier, it was a challenge for the people to get it in the first place. What value this can create it. I think we are past this. So it is usually not a hurdle anymore. There is a perceived complexity, and I say it's explicitly perceived, because usually when platforms really dig into it, what does it take from them to basically integrate it? The efforts lie different than they expect, right? So they always initially think there's a lot of technical challenges, a lot of technical things that they need to do. Maybe there's also, I don't know, calling it embedded lending might be not helpful on this. But initially it turns out that basically the partners that integrate with us, or also the engineering teams, basically are super smooth, and it goes quite fast. So this is a perceived one that you need to overcome. But whereas the real challenge, this is usually what is underestimated, and where we need to do a lot of education, and also need to provide a lot of guidance. That is like this contextual access to financing. This doesn't happen automatically, right? So it's and this is what really makes the magic, right? So I don't know, a seller on a marketplace, inventory goes down, or he has basically crazy high sales. This is where you need to basically enable them, double down on this, and get the required financing. So you need to really work together with the platform partners on basically leveraging their data and leveraging the context of their platform with financing. And this requires not so much conviction, conviction, so people get it. But the effort required for doing so is usually underestimated, and it's harder than in the end, because that's what makes it really powerful. So you need to really work together with the platform partners on basically leveraging their data and leveraging the context of their platform with financing. And this requires not so much conviction, so people get it, but the effort required for doing so is usually underestimated, and it's harder than in the end, because that's what makes it really powerful, right? When you really have this transactional intent, this contextual link to it. So this is the thing where we really spend a lot of time on building up our resources to help them, but also also educating them, spending time in workshops to basically get this right.
Understood.
Maybe one thing to add, and I think probably this is the same for Banxware, Fabian. What we also are doing a lot with the go-to-market team is business case validation, right? Because we're working both in B2B and B2C, and especially when we're talking with B2C or companies who are active in the B2C space, we're also challenging them, right? Because in the end, if you just want to bring a new account and a card into the market free of charge and try to monetize this somewhere else, this is a really difficult value proposition in terms of business case. Yeah. And therefore, something that we are keen to is also to be a consultant for these kind of leads that are talking to us. And if we are also seeing that maybe a business model is not sound because someone just wants to build a new neobank without any edge, this is difficult, right? But if you really have an idea where it's about the contextualization, about adding a value through embedded finance, which is not focused only on the embedded finance part, but where it's a good addition to an existing offering, for example, yeah. I think then the value is relatively easy also to convey, like both, especially also in a business case scenario.
Right. No, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there's been some discussion about this idea that's working as a BaaS or an embedded finance provider is like almost like angel investing, right? Where you need to really understand your customers, make sure that the business cases are validated, and you sort of make a little bit of a bet on them and say, okay, like, you know, we believe in you, this is a good fit for your business, and we're going to, you know, work on this together and see this through, right? And I think that's maybe a topic for another day. That would be very cool to get into, but we got to move on a bit. So yeah, you know, we talked a bit about sort of like the daily grind of Banxware and Swan and what you all experience, but you know, we're also here to discuss. You know, there's an article was published last week that we wrote together, right? Mm-hmm. And we talk about this idea that through different embedded finance products, through accounts, through payments, through lending, you know, there's all of this really wonderful data that gets collected and can then be used to sort of inform other experiences and build this sort of pyramid, right, of very useful product experiences in this context, right? So we'd love to sort of get your take about this sort of idea, and then naturally kind of where the future lies, where, you know, increasingly we'll see companies that embed multiple different embedded finance products together to form sort of this cohesive platform, right? And how platforms are going to develop in time. So yeah, you know, would be interested to sort of understand just from the baseline what kind of data is actually, you know, being collected and used by Swan and by Banxware today. Fabian, you can start.
Yeah, sure. So kind of, I think a almost natural thing around embedded lending from our point of view is that it's a very, very data-driven product, right? So like where traditional financing or lending processes, I don't know, take a couple of weeks until all documents are analyzed, that doesn't work in the embedded context, right? So you need to be there where the need is created in the first place, but then you also need to solve it almost immediately when it's there. So we started off, and it's already now, where we basically build a lot of different data points into our product and also into our credit decision in the end. So we leverage data from the platform where we are integrated with, right? That's contextual data. What is the merchant, the small business just doing? What's the need that it was basically identified? But also existing data from this platform partners, right? Around different contracts, right? In the marketplace setup, of course, you have the orders history, you have the revenue data, you know which product categories someone is basically active in the payment world. You have basically payment transactions, stuff like this. So we take this. We take also the existing kind of business information that are available on the platform. So that's mainly to also have a very smooth user experience, because nothing more annoying than filling out 3 times your company name, right? So everything is basically there already leveraged from the platform. And then we enrich with other sources. We always look into bank account data, super reliable information for us, super valuable asset. Depending on the platform that we work with, sometimes this information is available on the platform, we get it from them. Sometimes this information is not on the platform, so we serve with our own connectivity. The same goes for other revenue information, for example, from different sales channels, right? So your Amazon account, your Shopify account, or whatever basically a merchant basically has to generate its sales, we have connectivity to get it. Also, again, depends on the platform context. If we work with a marketplace, you don't need this because you have this information firsthand. But if you work together to get, for example, the logistics platform, as we do also, you don't have this information. So we enrich this with this. And then, of course, there are other external information that we just also need to make a sound credit decision, right? So you need all this credit agency data, you need the company registers and all of this. And all of this needs to happen in the background, because we don't want to bother not our users and also not a platform with basically getting this. But with this, you can have a super smooth experience and also kind of a very fast access to the financing products. So this is the status quo, and I'm really happy to also talk how this can build up even more. But maybe first look.
Yeah, no, happy to add, because I think it's very interesting, because Fabian, you were saying how much of a potential there is, and how much untapped potential. The interesting part is that in lending, at least there's already a lot of usage of data, not the most efficient one probably, but if you think of bank accounts, of cards, I think data so far is very unused until today. So at least if I just think of my personal life, I have 2 accounts. I never got a product recommendation based on how I spend my money, about my consumption behavior. If we think of more B2B case, working capital, there's so many opportunities if you solely make use of transaction data, the transaction history, to make meaning out of it. Are you spend, or for what are you spending? Is there any recommendation how to spend smarter, for example, in terms of working capital? Because this is something where we also work together with a joint partner. There is so much potential in just seeing, okay, how much does the money last, simplified, for a company? And if you have good data on any kind of transaction, whether it is SEPA transfer or it's card transactions, the partners that we're working with, they can build new products, they can improve their existing products. And I think this is a great potential of also embedding financial products. So Banxware and Swan are both doing, because again, going back to this example of having one platform where you store all of your invoices and having one bank platform, they do not communicate necessarily with one another.
Yep.
If there's open banking connection, might be, but still it's not common, but rather something special if you really use this banking data.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the thing that's probably really interesting about fintech in general across the world is that I think everyone would agree, right, that with new platforms, there's new ways to basically capture and use data that was previously not possible, right? With like, handwritten ledgers now being, fully these core banking systems, etc. But across the world, across different categories, people are really in different spaces when it comes to actually being able to leverage this data into like new, better experiences, right? And I think your example, right, of you have these 2 accounts, no one's really giving you any good product experiences. This might be different in Asia, for instance, or in America, where they have maybe a little bit more edge on this. And I think that's something that's really interesting about this is that all these companies, there's opportunities to really get this down and really understand how to use this properly. And I think in the next 5, 10 years, looking at embedded finance in Europe, right, I think there's just a massive opportunity. I think that's also kind of why we're here and why we're chatting, because we really believe in this, right?
Definitely.
But yeah, totally see that. So I mean, if we think kind of more concretely, like we have, for instance, this common partner that David spoke about, Agicap, right?
Mhm.
And I think with them, there's like a lot of complementarity with what we're doing. Maybe Fabian, you can talk a little bit about how Banxware works with Agicap, and then David, you can also explain a little bit, and then we can sort of bring it all together and sort of explain that this could be sort of like perhaps a paradigm, a very good use case. I'm of course the English speaker here, and I mess up. A very good use case for this sort of idea of really bringing together different embedded finance experiences into one platform.
Yeah. Yeah, as David already mentioned, right? So kind of the liquidity management part, cash flow management part that Agicap basically does for its SME users. It like it is a natural good place to basically bring in accounts, payments, but also lending, because right, if you basically if you are in charge of your finance and of your cash flow, you're also concerned, right? Where do I need when there's a gap, or when is there basically kind of opportunity that I might miss because I don't have the required financing available. And what we're doing here basically, we are helping SMEs that use Agicap to also get quick access to financing, to fuel their growth, to overcome seasonality challenges, for example, with a quick and fast access to this to cash. It's revenue-based financing, so we basically take this natural data that is basically that goes into the cash flow and into the liquidity, and this is what we basically use and leverage for our financing product, and help this merchants grow faster.
Understood. And Swan must be part of this as well, right? There must be a component here that we're also touching.
Exactly, because Swan enables the Agicap users in the end to open bank accounts, issue cards, and through this, of course, the platform itself has access to a lot of data, which they then can use, for example, to say at some point it might be worth pitching a lending product, because liquidity might be scarce at some point in time. And I think this is really the beauty. This is a really strong value proposition, which also shows, I mean, there's like four core functionalities of a bank. It's storing money, moving money, lending money, and investing money. And the two of us, we already have three of them. The investment part is missing, but already here you can see the great potential of embedding financial products and substituting one another.
No, understood. Yeah, I mean, I think that's again like this trend, right, of almost, there's also this big topic we can also maybe chat a little bit about, this idea of bundling and rebundling and unbundling, and how a business is basically just this constant circle of that. And what we might be seeing, and perhaps also again why we're chatting, is that there's sort of this little bit of a wave, a trend that's pushing us forward, that's maybe going in sort of this rebundling direction, where these fintech startup companies are beginning to resemble the sort of universal traditional banks who were providing all range of services, but this time in sort of a more modular way, in a more refined way, using data, really getting to the customer's point of need, as we talked about, Fred. I think this is really a thing that's kind of occupies the mind of many people who are building in this space, and I think we chatted a bit before, and have maybe some ideas about the future, what this could look like. So do you have any sort of like grand ideas for what we think the rebundling could really lead to, in terms of these new embedded finance experiences, contextualized products, this kind of thing?
It's really a great, when you look a little bit in the history of fintech, right? It was really like, okay, let's break this entire bank up into very, very small pieces. What happened is, I think that there are a lot of great and much better products right now that solve individual use cases, and that is a really great achievement. Where maybe things before were more suboptimal. Now we have a lot of great individual products, but in the end, for users, for consumers, and for merchants, the value is added if you combine them. And I think what's rebundling in this scenario will look like is that it will be much more interoperability between the different players. I don't see one player basically doing it all, because in the end you are doing good in focusing on on your strengths, on your core competencies, to basically make one thing really great. But to basically make able, and technology is here, of course, the enabler, because we all build products with technology in mind first, and that basically allows us to stitch together like a payments, accounts, and a lending product, and create something completely new that didn't exist before. And I think this will come even more in the future, because of course, the kind of more and more platforms basically see this additional value that basically can be created, and collaboration between different embedded finance providers will allow here, create new products that come. I guess we also have still some challenges to solve, right? That's also one, right? This very fragmented, also regulatory framework that we all need to follow in different orders. Doesn't make it easy, I guess, but yeah, I'm pretty sure we will all find also great solutions to make this even smooth sailing together. It's going to be great.
Very good.
Yeah. And maybe also to add to this, I think in the past, to simplify it a bit, a lot of banking products were black and white, right? You could have a business bank account, which was not only for an SME in an industrial space, but also for a service company, for the baker, and so on, but not really dedicated to a specific customer group. And I think this is one of the examples where one could say, based on the unbundling, we allow to create more meaningful products for specific customer groups. And I think this goes both like for banking, but also especially for lending, because in the past year I've been talking to a lot of platforms who are building dedicated products, for example, for healthcare professionals, for logistics professionals, and some of them might find themselves having a hard time to actually getting a credit at all, because they just do not fit like the framework of a bank, because it's rather meant for a very broad customer group, but not for a specific one, where you might need also specific data to do real comprehensive judgment if you would issue a loan or not.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly. So we always believe in this triangle. That's how we look at things, where you basically, I have a certain customer segment with some specialities on the need, what they basically need, their financing needs. You have a certain platform context where this merchant is interacting, and where this need is also generated. But then you also need the matching product, and there's definitely not a one fits all, right? So you need to adapt. You need to adapt this to different segments, to different needs. And I like your example with the black and white bank account. Right? It was always a solution one fit all. There's no way that you could make it fit for yourself, so you had to take what's there. Now you can really customize and make this a solution that fits individual needs, and that's going to be a great thing.
Yeah, no, I think it sounds super good. You guys definitely have really good ideas. It's clear that you've been thinking a lot about the space, right? I think, the sort of maybe like the highest level to sort of summarize, I think this trend, right, is that you had these big banks, they were serving everybody, but maybe not super well, sort of in this black and white way. Then you had this sort of first trend of fintech, whereas, okay, like let's do these special services where we can dedicate ourselves to a particular segment, what they need, but provide them sort of only sort of the basics, right? And I think now we're sort of in this third stage where it's like, okay, now that we gave sort of the simple things, accounts or just lending, now we move into this new phase where it's like, okay, now we have the basic infrastructure to support these specific segments, but now we actually add more products, more capabilities, and we become sort of this all-in-one platform, providing payments, providing lending, providing perhaps investment products, all together to these specific segments. And I think that's sort of where we're going, and I think there's a lot of really interesting potential about particularly where Banxware and Swan, for instance, kind of fit into this. And yeah, we need to see what happens. Yeah, I mean, I think we can sort of wrap here. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add, any last words?
Yeah, maybe not the last words, but like this intersection between as David said, right? You have basically your payments, you have accounts, you have lending, and you have investment. The intersection of this, of course, the bank always could do this themselves because they were all basically kind of creating all of these products on their own. Now basically you need to intersect with different providers, but we have a much more technology focused way. So I see there really a great future of creating new products that didn't exist before, that solve challenges for nowadays businesses, which are not solved right now in the market. And here playing the strengths of these different providers, I guess we are really up for something new here.
Sure.
Sounds great. I couldn't add anything to this very nice statement.
Yes, no, very good. And I think we really covered a lot of interesting ground. I think a lot of people who will be consuming this will learn something new, and we'll look forward to hearing from us again soon sometime. Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, David. Thank you, Fabian. It was lovely to have you, and have a great birthday. Happy birthday. And take care. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Max. Thanks for having us. Bye.